Hi, I'm Daryl Swanson, co-founder and partner at EA Maven with Yarrick here, my business partner. And today we're going to take you
Hello.
through the Regional Air Mobility Index analysis that we have done here in the UK to give you a good understanding of what we can do within this space. So I'm going to quickly share my screen, and we are going to turn our cameras off, and you can concentrate on that. Right. So as I said, I'm Daryl, and we're going to take you through this Regional Air Mobility Index presentation. So first, a quick introduction, EA Maven. So this is the company that Yarrick and I have formed just recently as a joint effort to explore advanced air mobility and help investors in infrastructure, OEMs, and future operators get a better understanding of what the advanced air mobility industry can do. As I said, I'm Daryl. I've got about 25 years experience in the airports industry, doing a lot of acquisition due diligence type work. And Yarrick, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jarek Zajk. I'm also co-founder and partner at EA Maven. My career of expertise is service development, network planning, and traffic forecasting. And for the last 10 years, I've been working on various projects for various consulting companies. And for the last 5 years, we've been working together with Daryl on electric aviation and advanced air mobility.
Brilliant. Okay, so basically this presentation is an extension of the work that we've been doing with the UKRI, and that report has been published just recently. So what we wanted to do was extend that analysis to look at regional air mobility across the UK. And we've actually done that based on the RABA group of airports. So that's the Regional and Business Airports Group. It's a grouping of airports in the UK which have less than 3 million passengers per annum, and they truly are representative of the regional airports. So it excludes the London airports and the large regionals like Manchester and Birmingham. So swiftly going on, as we said, this is an extension of the work that we've been doing in the industry in terms of distributed aviation and regional air mobility. That's our distributed aviation paper. And you can follow those QR codes to download them and understand what we're talking about in terms of the economics of advanced air mobility. It was fortuitous on the same day that our paper on distributed aviation was published, that NASA published their paper on regional air mobility. And if you read distributed aviation, you'll see that it naturally leads to a regional air mobility model. As I said, UKRI published this paper. They engaged us to undertake this, to take a look at 20 potential routes across the UK as a demonstration of what is possible. And in that, we looked at 14 eCTOL routes and 6 eVTOL routes. And you can see some of the big numbers that we're getting there. But 224 aircraft needed, of which 160 are eVTOLs, 64 19-seat fixed-wing electric aircraft, saving 9,000 tons of carbon emissions, which is actually quite significant. And then we're seeing some big numbers there in terms of economic stimulation just through time savings. And that time savings is quite staggering. So we're looking at about 11 person years per week, or 528 years on an annualized basis. And that's generating about 3.1 million per aircraft, or 704 million altogether. The aircraft utilization, we're looking at about 1,854 hours. It's slightly different depending upon whether it's an eVTOL or an eCTOL type aircraft, but we actually get into those details in the report. So please, by all means, scan that QR code and that will take you through the assessment. So I'm going to pass over to Yarrick to take us through the next bit of the slide. So Yarrick, please.
When we started working on the RAM index and the methodology, we've been wondering what type of data sets would be the best to describe our analysis and to find out how travelers behave and how travelers travel between certain places. So, of course, traditional aviation data give you insights into traditional aviation services, but doesn't necessarily give you any insights of travelers that use or travel from places that are not covered by traditional services, aviation services. So we thought that the best use of data and the best use of analysis would be with mobility data. Basically, this gives you the best insights into people's behavior, people's purposes of travel, and it covers all modes of transport. So we use this data to analyze all kind of movements and all patterns that travelers take when they move within the UK. And just to give you an overview of the process that we've taken, we basically analyzed all 36 Rabat airports and their catchments, and how people travel from their catchments between those places and to other airports. And we used several factors for our indexing methodology, which of course is redacted because it's our IP, but just to give you an insight into it, we use several factors. Some of them are like universal factors like time of travel or what means of transport travelers use, but we also assign some, let's say, in-house typology and methodology to assess how many routes would be most suitable for future AAM operations. And out of those analyses, we've identified 390 routes that could be utilized by future AAM from those Rabat airports. And the next slide actually will be showing the big numbers. So as you can see, we've analyzed 36 regional airports within the Rabat group, and we analyzed more than 1,000 routes, analyzing based on some certain distance thresholds, some certain thresholds in terms of other factors. So the total addressable market for this assignment was more than 5 million travelers per week, which gives you more than 242 million annually. So it's a big number. And our insights and our analysis indicate that more than 80% of travelers travel by car, producing significant carbon emissions, and more than 20% are business travelers, and almost 80% are leisure and BFR travelers. And in terms of top routes, we've identified 390 routes that could be suitable for AM operations, which gives you the total market of 4.7 million, which is 93% of total addressable market. And that gives you 226 million annually. So it's a big number that is not utilized by traditional aviation. And in terms of modes of transport, more than 82% would travel by car, and equally to the total addressable market, 21% would be business travelers and 78.7% leisure travelers. And we believe those 21% would be the first movers and adapters in terms of AAM services. And then we start going into some ridiculous numbers, and you can see we calculated on those 390 routes, you could save 310,000 hours weekly and almost 14.9, so almost 15 million hours annually. So it's a really ridiculous number. And this would translate into economic stimulation to increase productivity, because this time could be basically used into some other activities, and the economic stimulation of this time saved would be around 9 million pounds per week and almost 430 million per year. So this is like huge amount of money, and this is only for those 390 routes identified based on some thresholds that we use. But the total addressable market here is also when you take account, for example, some other airports, because when we mentioned regional mobility, we exclude London, for example. So if you include London, this number would be much higher.
So in terms of the big numbers, just carrying on from what Jarek was saying, so there's 32 airports that have a share of those 390 routes, and for each of the top 10 Rabat airports, they have at least 20 routes, and the top 20 have at least 10 routes. And interestingly, the top Rabat airport actually has 28 routes and access to about 485,000 travelers in a week. So that's quite significant. And the second top airport has 27 routes, and unfortunately, it's been in the press recently here in the UK, but for all the wrong reasons. And I'll let you troll through press releases to find out which one we're actually talking about. So we thought it would be important to try and compare this to traditional aviation within from 2019, so the big numbers. So there were 63 airports with commercial services, and that's 28 out of the 40 RABA airports. So in total, in 2019, there were 221 routes, with 42 of them serving London. And you can see the number of frequencies and seats offered. But interestingly, only 38 routes we're crossing over between the 390 routes that we've identified just from these RABA airports. So that means that we've identified 352 unique routes for AAM operations that are not operated by traditional aviation. And it's worth actually saying that on many of those routes, we're seeing in excess of 5,000 and 10,000 passengers or travelers traveling on those routes on a weekly basis. So that just means that there's a huge number of routes out there which would be completely suitable for traditional hydrocarbon aviation as they're looking to pivot into advanced air mobility aircraft. So when we actually look at it in terms of the actual split, the airports there are redacted, of course, but what we are showing is the number of travelers in a week. It certainly is interesting. And again, it's saying that only 38 of those 390 routes are operated by traditional aviation. So what we also wanted to take a look at is actually the aircraft that can serve those routes. So that's what the frequency distribution looks like for all the travelers based on the distance between them. And the minimum distance there in that red line is the 60 nautical mile mark on the right. And then we go to the extents on the left. So the vertical VX4, they can cover 81 routes. So this is, again, low-hanging fruit for vertical, whoever operates their aircraft to come into the UK market, and immediately they would have access to 81 routes. Joby, again, the same thing. Should they come to the UK and start operating, they would have access to 217 of these 390 routes that we've identified. Aviation Alice, 371, and then of course we start really getting into the big range aircraft. So the Heart Aerospace ES-30, the Electra Aero. We also include the Otis Aviation aircraft in there. But then the traditional hydrocarbon aircraft, the DO-228 or the P-2012, again, we'll be able to cover all those routes. So anybody who's operating those aircraft can come in and start operating on those routes and probably do it quite profitably as well. So we get into a bit of the details. I'm going to let Jark talk about this and take us through the next little section.
Yeah, so our market assessment, of course, includes, this is just an example of slides that we show to summarize our analysis. This shows a lot of insights into how the travelers behave, total traffic between all the catchments that we analyzed. We analyze also the time required to travel, and we also take into account many other factors. So these are just examples of our analysis, which would be available in the full version. And here we just would like to talk more about our demand modeling approach. So basically the RAM indexing process is like the first step of analysis we take. So basically we've analyzed 390 routes, and that would be most suitable for future AAM operations within the UK. But of course, to assess some other factors that could be taken into account when analyzing those routes in details, we would need some other approach than just an indexing process. So that's why we've developed our demand modeling tool, which gives you some more insights, not only into the total number of passengers or travelers traveling between two catchment areas of each airport analyzed, but also this model gives you insights on how many people would switch from other modes of transport, assuming you could introduce your new AAM service on that route. So basically, it depends on how many frequencies you would put on the route. Your model would analyze how many passengers would switch from each mode of transport. So for example, if you have X number of passengers traveling by car and rail, this will give you like detailed insights on how many people would switch from cars, how many people would switch from rail, and this gives you some more insights into some further analysis that we do, which is basically scheduling analysis. So based on our demand modeling, we also can predict how many aircraft you would require on a given route based on our demand modeling analysis, and we take this on an OAD basis. So basically out of that, we can create schedule for each route on a OND basis, and this gives you insights into the number of aircraft required and average aircraft utilization per route in terms of daily or weekly or even yearly utilization, and this translates into load factors, and also we take into account achievable one-way net fares, because fares are quite important. Of course, we compare this with other modes of transport, but we don't do any yield management, so any other operator would probably include that in their analysis further on. But also from this scheduling point of view, we can also analyze some economic benefits. So basically we can analyze total time saved from switching modes, and this translates into economic boost for those travelers that could save time. So we can analyze that, and of course we also take into account some carbon emission factors. So basically we could or we can analyze carbon emission savings from those that's switching from cars and rail. And these are just examples of our analysis. So as you can see, we take our numbers from the demand model, and then we translate this into scheduling. So basically we can see our analysis outputs from before scheduling and after scheduling. So basically the scheduling part is optimizing or smoothing out the results. And these are just examples of our analysis. So as you can see, we can analyze total achievable weekly demand, load factors, frequencies, fare per mile, average one-way net fares, aircraft requires utilization. So all this kind of information that any operator or airline would require for the business planning. And again, these are just outputs from our analysis on an Oxford route. These are just the summary for weekly and annual frequency, seats, and demand numbers and the aircraft required, as well as some information on the weekly utilization throughout the week. And these are just outputs showing the capability of our demand model. So basically we can we do our analysis on a weekly basis, and we can analyze and assess how many frequencies and how many seats would be required to accommodate the demand. And the demand is based on a basically daily analysis on each day, each direction, and that translates into load factors as well. And this yeah, so Darrell, continue maybe.
So this is just an example of the outputs that we get from our scheduling tool. So we actually do linked schedules. So for operators, this is very important so that they can really understand what the potential is for them. For airport investors, once you have a linked schedule, you can actually start to import all of that information into your planning process, so that you can actually understand how many stands are required for that. You can figure out how many passengers are going to be going through your facility, and of course that translates into the revenue potential for advanced air mobility, and then you can figure out the capital cost investment. This is actually showing what the actual schedules are each way on this Oxford route. And the one slide that we haven't actually showed here, which is probably the most boring one, but provides all the information for electric aircraft. It tells us what the peak power charging requirement is going to be. So again, that's going to be very important on the infrastructure provision side of the equation. So in summary, for this one eCTOL route from Oxford to somewhere, we need 8 aircraft having a 82.5% average load factor, generating over 20 million in revenue. And then we have that economic stimulation in the number of passengers per annum that would be switching from traditional surface modes of transport. So I hope that gives you a good insight into what we're doing with EA Maven and the Regional Air Mobility Index. So if you have any questions, by all means, please reach out to us. If you want a copy of the actual slide deck, contact us through the website. That would be great. And we can have a chat. We can send through a copy of the report. We look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.